my thing is sound, and I know you're really, obviously you're really interested in sound. And then, back to Bowie again, sound and vision. There's kind of two different things, right? But I was thinking when I read up on your stuff earlier about Alien Sex Fiend. So
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard any Alien Sex Fiend, but there's a
No,
guy
but
called,
what a name.
yeah, it's a great name, yeah, a guy called Nick Fiend, and his partner was Mrs. Fiend, right? But he saw himself in a way. It reminded me when I was reading up on you, had a very visual kind of a very visual perception of songwriting, and
Mm,
it's kind of really unusual, because you're fascinated by visuals, aren't you? And you use the visuals as a songwriting platform.
absolutely.
It kind of, I know you've talked about it lots of times probably, but how does that run through what you do? And I'll come on to one of your videos in a minute because I really enjoyed that. But how does that run through what you do as a songwriter? How does that play a part now?
It started, well, I always think that, a movie is elevated by the music and music is elevated by a visual as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So the marriage of those two things, because it's like sensory overload in a good way. Um, but at first it was like a writing tool, like you said. It Studios aren't glamorous, right? You've been in them. It's it's four walls that you've seen every day, and you and some guy eating crisps. It's like it's
yeah,
so I if I want to express a feeling, it was a way to like fantasize that I wasn't in that room. So I
nice,
would
nice.
project on the wall in front of me like Blade Runner. Then I've
Yeah,
got a synth in front of
I
me.
love Blade Runner.
Oh,
One of my
I could.
favorite films. But there you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a whole other
The
thing.
original, the original Blade Runner. I mean, yeah.
Have you just quick tangentially, because I'm a huge Blade Runner fan, but
Yeah.
if I think that's the best score ever. But have you heard of a podcast called What Went Wrong?
No.
It's a film podcast where they do a deep dive on all the problems and issues around the making of a film
Oh
that
yeah.
we don't necessarily know about. And the Blade Runner episode is mind blowing.
Pete,
And one,
can you hang on 1 second? I really want
yeah,
this
yeah,
story. My
yeah,
mate is
yeah,
knocking on the door.
yeah,
He's going to
yeah,
let him
go,
into
go get
something.
it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
This is my friend Colin I was telling you about.
Nice to meet you, mate.
It is nice to see you. How you doing?
Nice,
Sitting in the background and have a listen, yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
good. If you, sorry, Pete, because he was knocking on the door.
All good.
Uh, um, Stick with that thing. So there's the What Went Wrong podcast, and you were talking to me about Blade Runner, yeah, and they're running out of money with the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 2 hour episode. I couldn't believe it. I had to stop what I was doing, but because I thought I knew a lot about that film, but I truly did not. And going back to what we said as well, that it's like just pure drive by the people making it. The studio were like, this is a disaster. They saw rushes early on, and they were like, we're going to kill this movie. This is not,
Wow.
because they wanted it. They thought it was going to be the next Star Wars. That was the pitch. A big action, like the whole family can go see it. And then they saw these clips and they were like, you've made this like super dark sci-fi.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they ran out of money pretty quickly. And Ridley Scott, he wanted to still build this city. So they went next door and borrowed the models from Star Wars. And the main skyscraper you see in the background is what's it called? The main ship from Star Wars. The
Enterprise?
Yeah, flipped upside down.
Huh?
So it's like that shape. Well, the upside down bit, it just looks like happens to look like a skyscraper. So it's just stuff like that. And and then it was a complete flop. which I didn't know, complete flop. And then 10 years later, there was a re-release on VHS in Japan, and VHS was having this like cool retro resurgence thing, and Blade Runner got its life. But even like there's clips, I don't even know how they got it. They when they decide that the studio decided it was a total fail, it was their idea to have a voiceover, because they were saying there's no story, so we need to just make one up and have Harrison Ford say it.
Wow.
And there's clips from the booth where he's gone in to do the voiceover, and he's saying it, and you hear the people who are supposed to be just there recording him laughing because it's so bad, and then you hear Harrison Ford go, "What the fuck am I doing? Like, this is never going to work. This movie's terrible." Like they all yeah. And now they're all like, "It's my greatest work." But it took a long time for people to understand it. And to circle back, I love those stories because it didn't fit into what people wanted, but they just had so much belief in it that they just knew that over time it would find the right people, and it did. And we're talking about it right now. Like, that's how impactful it ended up being, you know?
Yeah, the guy behind me, Colin, is also from Cardiff. He absolutely is his favorite movie as well, Blade Runner. So, yeah,
I can't tell you. Every time I sit in front of I've literally bought synths before, just trying to find that perfect
sound,
that Vangelis sound. And then I remember that I'm not him, and I move on.
Yeah. Have you actually, is that any of that Vangelis stuff ever come into any of your stuff? Have you actually used some of those sounds in your stuff?
Yes. That, if not that exact sound, because I'm always conscious of it just being too much of a rip-off or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, just just the actual kind of the sounds.
But that, the kind of synth, the pad sounds and stuff I like to use is all because of that film.
That's, I mean, and it totally, well, it epitomizes really what you said earlier about when we were talking about sound and vision. You know, I mean, that particular movie, the soundtrack is beautiful, the cinematography is beautiful. It just absolutely just meets somewhere in the middle, doesn't it?
Oh my God, pick a scene. It's like the Tears in the Rain thing with
I love that bit. I love that bit.
And you're just,
yeah, great bit of sound design as well, actually.
It was so influential because of even the way it's graded. I'm like, now if I even see a film trailer or a poster that has like neon signs in puddles of rain, I'm watching that movie.
Yeah.
Like that dystopian broken city thing. I think it's just like and even photography, I'm just always trying to make Blade Runner, I think.
Yeah.
Which is actual possible in LA.
Yeah, probably is. Yeah, I don't know. Did you by any chance see the more recent kind of homage to it?
Yeah, I did. I thought, oh God, it was so complicated because I'm always a bit like, why are they making another one of something?
I just couldn't do it. I tried to I just couldn't do it.
I know. I didn't love it.
No.
And I love that director, and I just, same as you. I'm trying to be positive here, but I think I just love the first one so much. It was going to be, no matter what they did, I was going to struggle.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it all the way through. But coming back to your stuff, I watched Carousel earlier, and the video.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting video, and going back to what I said about the songwriting as well, it's very, very tuneful and melodic. That kind of pulls you into a mood. And this, I'm asking you this because we've been talking about cinematography and sound and music, etc. So it runs through what you do as well. So that was your concept, I guess, the video. So Could you briefly kind of talk me, what was the message you were trying to get across with that?
Yeah, Carousel is probably the song that sums up most what I was trying to say across the album in general. You know, it's very much about getting sober and the lyric in the chorus, not to quote my own lyrics, but just simply that everything's a circle if you just lean into the turn, is just to say kind of let go and be grateful and live in the moment. And so that constant that idea of circles kept coming up, and I wanted to reflect that in the video. And I know an amazing artist who goes by the name Mom Love Art, who's really amazing, and I just asked him if he would paint what his interpretation of a mandala, you know, the perfectly symmetrical. It's like that. I just think it's the most amazing concept, that Buddhist practice where they spend a month making the most perfect, intricate, symmetrical painting, and then they destroy it and they don't take any pictures of it. And it's, you know, the whole like losing their ego. It's like, would I still make music if no one was ever going to listen to it? It's complicated. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it was about that. And then when I edited that video, and it was like I wanted the whole thing. You know, I have all these big ideas, and then it's just about like how close I can get with the confines of whatever it is, budget, time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just have this thing where you felt like you were constantly.
It's kind of dark, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it always is.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, like
yeah. It kind of pulls you into it. What was the location for that?
I found there's an amazing website here called Peerspace, and it's just people who have these kind of interesting, unique properties, I suppose, and you could just rent them for the day, or the hour even. And I was looking on there, and I just saw it, and immediately I knew I wanted to use it because it was fucked. It's like this old, decrepit warehouse in this rundown part of town, but it has those huge windows.
Yeah.
Beams come through.
Yeah.
So I knew, you know, in LA, every day there's a certain time where the light gets really kind of orange, and I knew that because that room was so dusty, that when that light came through, it would create those, you know, you see in those movies, like those shafts of light. So it was to create that mood, like you said. I wanted it to be that kind of mysterious, rundown thing.
And so you kind of directed that as well, then, did you? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I've always wanted to do that. I don't know what I'm doing at all with directing. I just try and express to whoever's there what I'm trying, what I imagine, which I guess is directing. But I would never say, you know, I've never directed actors or anything like that. So I wouldn't say I know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm trying to achieve, and I just try and convey it.
And you knew the kind of shots you wanted to capture, and so you had a time of day in mind, I suppose, did you?
Yeah, totally. And that's always such a, you know, that's always a battle here, because magic hour, you know, or they call it blue hour in the morning, I think, is like so specific. You have an hour and a half at each end, but it's magic. It's truly, the light is magical. And then anything outside of that here is so bright that it's, you've got those two windows. If you want to do something like a bit moody, you've got those two windows. So it's always a battle of, are we going to be exactly ready at that time? We had a bit more control in that room because you could black out the windows a little bit to try and fake it a bit. But
it looked a bit like a prison, actually. Like a cell, you know? Yeah.
I love that. I haven't even thought of that because, especially if I think about it, we're wearing like boiler suits.
Yeah, and the outfits as well. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god, I love that. That adds a whole layer. I should have pretended that I meant that.
I mean, I watched it once, Pete, to be honest, and I watched it through, and it kind of grabbed me, and I really enjoyed it. But I did want to specifically ask you, what was going on there, because I think it's open to interpretation.
There's a video for the song before that called Strange Times, where it was actually me trying to do a kind of sci-fi, like 80s 90s themed sci-fi thing, and I had an whole idea, this like high concept thing about a soldier being haunted by someone he had not been able to save, and then you realize that you've got 3 minutes to try and tell that story.
Yeah.
So it ends up being a bit of a confusing. Luckily the song is called Strange Times, so I just get to say, well, it was meant to be strange. But you do end up with this kind of it always ends up being more confusing than I intended. But then I love that sense of surrealism in film, so I don't mind